Hey guys, how's it going? I'm Sydney from PhoneDog.com, and I have here the Samsung DoubleTime from AT&T. It's one of their new low-end smartphones, and it has kind of this interesting form factor. Not only do you have this touchscreen display on the outside, but you also have an internal touchscreen display, and of course you have the physical keyboard. So it's a form factor that we've seen on a couple of feature phones, but it's just starting to make its way into the smartphone arena. So I'm going to do a full review and talk about the form factor, talk about that physical keyboard, and then as well, other features of the device, and then let you know if I would recommend it, if you should look into the DoubleTime, or maybe just look into another smartphone on AT&T's lineup. Before we get on to the review, I have to say, especially to our friends at Best Buy Mobile, we thank them because they send us the phones that we add to our One Pop Bandit game, which is a game where you guys can win free phones. One of the great things about Best Buy Mobile is that when you buy a phone from them, you don't have to worry about rebates because the price on the tag is the price you pay. So thank you, Best Buy Mobile, for being so awesome. Thank you guys for watching this video. It's a review of the Samsung DoubleTime from AT&T. I'm Sydney from PhoneDog.com. Let's go check it out. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started with the Samsung DoubleTime. I do have it plugged in right now. If you can see, I have it plugged into the charger because the battery was extremely low. I'll tell you guys about the battery whenever I get into that, if you're wondering why don't you just wait till it's fully charged. But I'll explain that whenever I start talking about the battery. But Samsung DoubleTime, it's a low-end phone, but it has this kind of interesting form factor where you have the main external display here on the front, which is a touchscreen display, of course, but then you can flip it open, and you also have this internal display, which is also a touchscreen, and of course you have the physical keyboard. So it's a little different. It's a form factor that we've seen before on certain feature phones, like the Envy series by LG, had kind of the same form factor, but with the DoubleTime, you get the addition of a touchscreen instead of just having a display here. Now the internal display works in landscape mode only, and then the external display works in obviously landscape mode as well as portrait mode. Both displays are the same size. They're 3.2-inch display. They both have the same resolution, 320 by 480. This is a pretty standard resolution for low-end phones. It does mean that you're going to get some pixelation. Once we get close to the text here, you're going to notice a lot of pixelation. I especially noticed this when web browsing, kind of having to zoom into text in order to read it. I did notice a lot of pixelation, as well as, graphics sometimes are rough or maybe grainy. Again, with a low-end phone, I think it's a display that you would expect for a phone at this price point. 3.2 inches, maybe a little bit too small for some, but of course you have the added bonus of having a physical keyboard, so you're not going to be doing a lot of typing with the display, with that 3.2-inch display. But I noticed that whenever typing, it was fairly easy to type on. Now granted, I have small hands, so my tiny fingers can fit and type a sentence perfectly fine. The quick brown fox. So, see, I don't really have too many problems except for that one word. But just, overall, in testing the device, I've been able to use a keyboard and, didn't really have too many problems with it. But again, if you have larger hands, and you probably do, you may have problems with that. In terms of virtual keyboards, you get the stock Android keyboard, which is what you see here. And then you also get Swipe, which is a keyboard that you can use by just swiping through the quick brown. So, for the most part, the method that I used for typing was, if it was just a little bit of text that I needed to input, not too many words or phrases, then I would use a virtual keyboard. But for the most part, I use the physical keyboard just because, obviously it's going to be your best option. And this is a very well designed physical keyboard. What makes it really great is that the keys are rubber, so they have a lot of grip to them, which makes it very easy to differentiate between each key. So even though they are very flush with the surface, whenever you have a very smooth and slick surface, and then each key is grippy, you kind of get the idea. It is very easy to differentiate each key. As you can see, they're island style keys. The size is great. Overall, the keyboard has been very easy to type on. I can type on it very quickly. Of course, it's kind of uncomfortable to type on whenever I have the charger plugged in. As you can see, no dedicated number row. It's built into the top row of letters. And then you have a dedicated spacebar row, which is excellent. I love it when manufacturers do that. And then you also have dedicated keys for certain punctuation marks, like the period, question mark, and comma. That's always nice to have. You know, it just makes it a lot easier than having to push Function or Alt in order to get to the comma or the period, you know, two keys that you're going to use a lot. You have these directional arrows, backspace, enter, .com key, and then Alt will take you to www. And then right above the keyboard you have physical buttons again for menu, home, back, and search, which are of course on the front here, but you do also have them above the keyboard. But overall, it's a great keyboard, and I really haven't had any problems with it. I love the grippy texture of the keys. It just makes it very easy to type on. So let me give you guys a quick hardware overview. Below the display you have 4 physical buttons. These are actual physical buttons, not capacitive touch buttons. For menu, home, back, and search, they're pink. So, you know, if you're a guy, you don't like pink, keep that in mind. On the left side you have the volume rocker button. On the bottom is the micro USB port, obviously. On the right side there's nothing because you have the hinge. And then on the top is a 3.5mm headphone jack and the power button. It's a pretty solid feeling device. You know, it's plastic, of course. You know, the build quality isn't excellent, but still, you know, I don't have any build quality concerns. It feels pretty solid. It is a little bit thick just because it has a physical keyboard, so that's to be expected. And then, you know, again, it has a 3.2-inch display, so you can gather it's also kind of short as well. But overall, it feels solid. It comes in this white color, and it's actually kind of a pearl white, so it almost has this sort of glossy metallic tint, you know, just barely to it, but makes it look, you know, kind of nice and shiny and really pretty actually. And then on the back, has a texturized finish. I don't know if you can see that. But yeah, it does look great, and then, you know, a little bit thick though because of the keyboard. 4.5 inches by 2.4 inches, and then 0.6 inches thick. Now you'll notice, you know, this is an Android device, but you'll notice that Samsung has made a lot of changes. They've added their TouchWiz UI. So for example, when I was in messaging, you know, if you've used other Android devices, you're going to notice this looks a lot different. Also the notification bar, you have toggle buttons here for Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, GPS, flight mode, and then lock or unlock screen rotation mode. It ships with Android 2.2 Froyo, and then like I said, Samsung's TouchWiz UI. Disappointing that it ships with Android 2.2, considering that version 2.3 has been out for about a year now, and we're, you know, coming up on the release of the next version after that. Of course, I don't have any information on if or when this device will get 2.3. You know, because it is a low-end device and just the caliber of it, I would be surprised if it got 2.3, and I'm willing to bet a lot of money that it's not going to get Android 4.0. That being said, you know, as disappointing as it is, I also understand that people who are, you know, looking for a budget device, you know, maybe looking into this phone, you know, either don't know what the different versions of Android are, or perhaps they don't care just because, you know, they need a budget-friendly device. But I will say that it's disappointing, and I'm just going to let you know that you can get other devices for the same price or cheaper that do ship with a newer version of Android. On top of those customizations that I mentioned, you'll see at the bottom here we have a dock with calls, messages, web browser, and then the app drawer. The app drawer scrolls left to right instead of top to bottom like in other versions of Android. Outside of the newest version of Android 4.0 that I mentioned earlier. You have some AT&T pre-installed apps, Code Scanner, Family Map, Navigator, and then a lot of these are apps you'll get with any Android device. Live TV, my AT&T navigation, I'm just pointing out the ones that are, you know, AT&T custom. Places, you saw that. YouTube and YP Mobile. You do get a Task Manager app. That's a customization of Samsung. So there's quite a bit of pre-installed apps, and you can't uninstall those. So keep that in mind. And that's kind of a negative because in terms of memory, the phone doesn't have a whole lot of available memory. Once you take away the memory that's, you know, taken up by those pre-installed apps, you only have 260 megs of remaining memory. Now the phone does ship with a 2 GB card. underneath the battery cover here. You can see it's right there. It does ship with a 2 gig card, and then you have the internal memory. But because there are so many pre-installed apps, you're going to be using this memory card a lot in areas where you can, and then you may want to buy a larger card. It supports up to 32 gigs of additional memory.